Coming up on MilCyberSync, Ukraine thwarting a major cyber attack on its infrastructure.
Also ahead, it's going to be just any other Tuesday from now on at Microsoft. We'll explain.
And Apple's chief goes to Washington in an appeal to keep its App Store from being targeted by legislators. So get ready to get in sync with MilCyberSync.
You're watching the MilCyberSync Weekly News with your host, Nick Thomas, and news anchor, Layla Gulen.
Hello and welcome to the MilCyberSync Podcast, reporting on the latest events happening in cyber news. I'm Layla Gulen with Brad Rhodes, who is standing in for our host, Nick Thomas. Brad, it's great to have you.
It's great to be here, Layla. It's always fun to talk with you and Nick, or Nick and you, or whoever's doing the podcast. It's awesome.
Any combination. So you've been on the podcast once before. Why don't you remind folks who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Brad Rhodes. I am a member of the Military Cyber Professionals Association. Been doing that for a while. Part of the crew that's heading up HammerCon, which is coming up here on the 19th of May. So we're excited about that. In my day job, I am an employee. I work for Accenture Federal Services, supporting our federal government clients, which is a lot of fun and always very interesting work. And in my other life, I am a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, and I'm a cyber warfare officer. So many hats and many things going on.
Oh my goodness. How many badges is that?
It's way too many badges. The running joke is I have my space wings because I'm also a space operations officer, and so I tap it, but there's no Star Trek communicator for me to be away. So there you go.
Not yet.
Not yet.
All right, Brad. Well, fascinating background there. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about about cyber mission growth. So U.S. Cyber Command's cyber mission force is expected to grow beyond the 133 teams it once had. The commander of U.S. Cybercom, General Nakasone, says it's a different force today than it was just 4 years ago. He says he'll probably start with 14 teams, but it will not be surprised if the department comes to a determination that more is necessary as part of the Pentagon's $11.2 billion cyber budget request for fiscal 23. Obviously, Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February and the ongoing war have increased the attention placed on the digital domain, where hackers and other malicious players continue to launch attack after attack. Cyber Command has played a key role in identifying threats and protecting networks at home and abroad. The Cyber Mission Force has been dubbed the Action Arm as it executes the Department of Defense's cyber operations. The DoD has been constructing the force since 2012, and all of its teams have hit full operational capability as of 2018. And having spent some time at U.S. Cybercom, that's really exciting news. There's my opinion, there's not enough of folks in the Cyber and National Mission Force. We need more. It is a complex environment that we are continuing to see so many players make an entry to. And it's not just nation state actors. It's terrorist organizations. It's low-level cyber criminals. It's high-level cyber criminals. Everybody's got to play in this, and we just don't have enough. We need some more cyber forces for sure.
A lot of jobs and not enough people to fill those positions, right, Brad?
That's true, and we continue to see that gap. And what's really interesting, Layla, is that so many industries today, so many industry verticals, whether it's hospitality, food service, federal government, state, local, you name it, the energy industry across the board, those entities, many of them, like every day they wake up and go, my gosh, we need some cybersecurity, and that is one of those things that, again, it just continues to grow every day. We say that the job gap is several million right now. We hire a bunch, then all of a sudden there's more jobs, and you go figure how that works.
Sure, it keeps perpetuating itself. Well, thank you for that, Brad. Well, moving on to Northcom, a U.S. Northern Command has asked Congress for an additional nearly $30 million to buy information technology equipment and to optimize infrastructure for artificial intelligence and machine learning. The upgrades would be located at its Joint Operations Center with the North American Aerospace Defense Command and would buttress efforts to ingest, process, and aggregate data across the Department of Defense's cloud computing environment and share intel with forces across all domains. Officials say incorporating artificial intelligence and machine machine learning into existing capabilities will allow users to pull needed information from existing data sets and share that data with leaders at all levels to achieve desirable outcomes. Brad.
No, obviously that's a good thing, sometimes, at least in my mind, anyways, Northcom, they get a little bit forgotten at times. They have a huge mission set working with the Department of Homeland Security to secure the United States and territories from those threats that are out there, and it's just continuing to grow. Northcom as a whole has the all hazards mission, and all hazards include cyber attacks.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So the Air Force cyber lead. So the White House is presently waiting on the Senate to confirm President Joe Biden's nomination for the nation's Air Force cyber lead. The president nominated Air Force Lieutenant General Mary F. O'Brien for appointment to the Joint Staff as the Director of Command Control Communications and Computer/Cyber. O'Brien has previously served in a range of intelligence, command and staff assignments since joining the military in the late 1980s. She is currently operating as the Air Force Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, Surveillance, Reconnaissance, and Cyber Effects Operations. Her title will include Chief Information Officer J6. If confirmed, O'Brien will play a key role in the Pentagon's joint all-domain command and control effort, or what we call JADC2, to ultimately drive interoperability and streamline communications between many of its systems. And just to point out there, many of its systems, there is a lot of systems across the Department of Defense and across the joint services, which now includes our friends in the Space Force, and being able to build out and construct a functional platform that allows all of those to interoperate is really, really critical. And General O'Brien is certainly up to that task.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, the U.S. Navy is looking at a new approach to cybersecurity as risks continue to increase. Chief Information Officer Aaron Weiss says that cybersecurity should be treated like the broader concept of military readiness, not a compliance problem like it has in the past. Hackers previously exploited mistakes on Navy and private networks by stealing or brute forcing credentials, as well as surreptitiously installing malware. In fact, Defense News in June 2018 reported Chinese-sponsored cyber attacks breached a Navy contractor's computers, jeopardizing sensitive data related to secret work on an anti-ship missile. Weiss says a more holistic approach would emphasize active cyber management that reduces red tape, audits, and boxes that need checking. Brett.
Now, this is a good one because a couple of things here. One, compliance is not security, and security is not compliance. Just simply following a checklist and saying I'm good doesn't really help anyone. And so I really appreciate the sentiment here. I always tell folks, networks, communications networks, computer networks, everything like that, it's very organic. It's all tied to what the people are that use the systems and the capabilities in those networks. And because everybody uses systems differently, we have to take a little bit different tact when we're actually doing auditing. We need to really think about the holistic approach here, and that's what really that's really what the Navy is advocating for here. Our systems are incredibly complex. And so a one-size-fits-all solution, which everybody likes those, right? A one-size-fits-all solution in cybersecurity, it's easy, isn't really the answer here.
Now, I have a question for you. So when you're looking at just the makeup of our country and how the different departments work with one another, how would that compare to some other developed countries in the world?
No, that's a really good question. The interesting thing is that in the United States, I think we're actually starting to get down the road in terms of doing it better than most. DHS CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security agency under DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and hopefully I got those acronyms right. I was literally looking at it today, and Lord knows I didn't get them right. But so CISA has the broad authorities to really drive the federal government at the executive branch agencies to do the right thing, to do the reporting they need to do, to to fix the vulnerabilities. And this is really, really good. In other countries, it just depends. I know places like the UK and other allies that we have. Australia, for example, Australia's got a great program. Have interacted with that one, personally doing so, whether it's research or looking at their policies. It really depends. If you get into less developed nations, it's a much bigger challenge. Because they just don't have, either they don't have the resources, they don't have the experience, they don't have the expertise. But I will say we are definitely in the United States on the right road, in my opinion, to get to better cybersecurity at the federal government level, and hopefully, as we do it good at the federal government level, that will ultimately trickle down to the state and local level.
Very interesting. All right. Well, thank you for that.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Army's multi-domain task force. So a third so there's two. That means there's two to begin with. So a third multi-domain task force is now part of the U.S. Army's $178 billion budget blueprint for fiscal year 2023. The third task force will be similar to the two already up and running and will be conducting electronic warfare and cyber operations. It will aid military experiments and exercises. The first was established in 2017 in Washington State at Joint Base Lewis McChord, and has since focused on the Indo-Pacific region, which includes China. The second in Europe was greenlit in September of 2021 and has an eye towards Russia. It includes intelligence, cyberspace, electronic warfare, and space detachments. The Army plans to construct 5 total multi-domain task forces where the task force will be located, where those task forces will be located has not been decided yet. These things are exciting to me because I'm a space guy, I'm a cyber guy, I do information operations, and it's got like all the things that I've done in there, and so it's pretty exciting. But the really what they're driving at here is that this is the recognition on the Army side of the house that these areas are all linked. If you can't do information operations without cyber. You're not doing cyber if you're not paying attention to information operations. And oh, by the way, a lot of our stuff goes over space-based capabilities and assets. And then you have to integrate the intelligence on top of that so that we can actually provide that clear sight picture to the commanders in the field. And that's really what it comes down to. And oh, by the way, those 5 things put together and then throw in electronic warfare, really, really complex to actually synchronize and make all of that work.
I can't even imagine. And you'll be talking about a story coming up in just a minute about Russia and China and what they're doing to bolster their cyber defense. Yeah. All right. So moving on to Cybersecurity Coalition, several companies have joined forces to launch the Operational Technology Cybersecurity Coalition. The coalition claims its goal is to help strengthen the defenses of industrial control systems and critical infrastructure in the United States. The OT Cyber Coalition was founded by industrial giant Honeywell and cybersecurity companies Forescout, Clarity, Nozomi Networks, and Tenable. Hopefully I said all those correctly, Brad. OT Cyber Coalition will work with government and industry stakeholders for the development of vendor-neutral, standards-based cybersecurity solutions. The OT Cyber Coalition is a lobbying group that plans on registering to lobby lawmakers and officials, and it could also seek legal status as a trade association. Interesting.
Yeah, this is also a good one. So OT, layer 0, right? So if you're familiar with the Open Systems Interconnect model, that's layers 1 to 7. We'd like to talk about OT, the sensors, the operational technology, industrial control systems, SCADA systems, those kinds of things. This is really important. Earlier this week, there was a co-branded cybersecurity advisory put out by Department of Energy, CISA, the National Security Agency, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, specifically talking about APT tools, so advanced persistent threat tools that are built to target ICS and SCADA devices. And obviously, that's the name of the game. If you can interdict or interrupt what's going on with sensors at layer 0, you can make significant problems for those of us that have to respond to a disaster caused by a broken, OT system. And so this is good. This means that the industry is really starting to look at this and really understand that this is a problem that we need to take into account when we're designing and planning for cyber systems.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Very interesting.
So Russia and Chinese space assets. A new report from the Defense Intelligence Agency says China and Russia have bolstered their space capabilities by at least 200% to extend future conflict into space. A report titled Challenges to Security in Space follows a 2019 DIA report that surveyed space and counter space programs being pursued by adversary nations including Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. The 2022 report highlights growth in Russia and Chinese on-orbit systems, as well as efforts to better organize their military space capabilities. The report highlights concerns about the threat of on-orbit debris, stating the likelihood of collisions between massive derelict objects in low Earth orbit is growing and will continue to rise until at least 2030. This report literally is hot off the press, and it's if you can Google this. It's available open source. It's a really great read. I did a search. There's like 40 some odd instances of cyber in that report. Why? Because space-based capabilities, all the ground-based systems, how does data transit? It goes over the internet. You may have heard Amazon Web Services has something called Ground Station as a Service. So you can get your own satellite time on, I'm not sure what satellites, but you can do it through Amazon Cloud now, which is super interesting. So the world of space and cyberspace is intersecting in ways we likely never thought possible. But it's actually it's always been there. We've just never thought of it like that. If anybody out there wants to Google, look at DEF CON 2020. It's a talk by a PhD student out of the UK called Whispers from Space. And it is a really unique way to get after interdicting communications downlinks from commercial satellites. Again, ethics here. Don't do that. But if you want to see the demonstration of that potential capability and the impact that it could have, that's a great talk to look at.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, here's a great story to kind of cap off our first half here. The Computer Emergency Response Team of Ukraine says it thwarted a cyber attack by a Russian hacking group. Dubbed Sandworm, the group is affiliated with Russia's military intelligence, tasked with sabotaging the operations of an unnamed energy provider in the country. Well, a statement disclosed that attackers attempted to take down electrical substations, Windows-operated computing systems, Linux-operated server equipment, and active network equipment. A cybersecurity firm says the attempted intrusion involved the use of ICS-capable malware and regular disk wipers, with the adversary unleashing an updated variant of the Indestroyer malware. This particular malware was first deployed in 2016 in an assault on Ukraine's power grid. So, hooray for them.
This is not the first time that Ukraine has had to deal with this. Right. They saw this in 2015. They saw this in 2016. There's the SANS Institute has we call them defense use cases that are out there. Defense use case 5 was the 2015 Christmas attack on the power substations and the three companies there in the Ukraine, and then the 2016 SANS defense use case number 5 talks specifically about the first version of the Indestroyer wiper. And yeah, it's not surprising to see the code reuse, because hey, if it works, it works. But two, again, this is not a surprising tactic if by threat actors that want to make an impact on the fight in Ukraine.
All right, well, it wasn't the first, and I'm sure it's not going to be the last. All right, well, we've got more to come. Apple looking more appetizing to cyber attackers. Details after the break.
Today's network and security monitoring solutions are vulnerable to overload situations that lead to decreased visibility and undetected intrusions. Monitoring applications require hardware to keep up with real-time traffic analysis, making it complex and costly. Your security monitoring solutions may be unable to keep up during cyber attacks or traffic spikes, making intrusion more likely. A new approach is needed to increase network protection and visibility. Excelio simplifies and streamlines your network monitoring for critical security, network, and application analysis. Learn more at excelio.com.
Welcome back. Microsoft is doing away with their Patch Tuesday. Starting in July, the second Tuesday of every month will just be another Tuesday, and we'll start rolling out automatic updates. The tech giant has released patches for vulnerabilities in its software every second Tuesday of every month since 2016. Now called Windows Auto Patch, this will allow Microsoft to patch bugs for its users without any effort on the user's part. Windows Auto Patch is also offered as a feature in Windows 10 11 Enterprise E3 at no additional cost. Windows Auto Patch will manage all aspects of deployment groups for Windows 10 and Windows 11, quality and feature updates, drivers, firmware, and Microsoft 365 apps. Microsoft says automating the management of updates will save time and can provide a response to changes, increase confidence around introducing new features, and close the protection and productivity gaps. And I venture to think, Brad, that you have something to say about this.
Yeah, this is a good news story because just this last Patch Tuesday, there was two significant vulnerabilities that Microsoft released, and one of them, CISA has jumped on as something that needs to be fixed right now, and that's that's again, when you think about that, so CISA, which in terms of its obviously broad responsibility for the federal government side of the house, but also advising all of the commercial entities out there that do work in the United States, man, that's a pretty tall order, and many enterprises, what do? They it's not that they rest on their laurels, but they test all the patches. They don't want stuff to break. I get all of that. But, these are ones where when these critical vulnerabilities roll out, and you may have seen it on your Windows machine. When I booted up my Windows machines yesterday, I got a little thing that said, hey, here's an update. You need to update it. I update my machines all the time, hit the update button. Yeah, it was down for 10 minutes and it came back up. But so many people out there, they don't do that. And then that's where the breaches happen. And it happens to small organizations and large organizations. And so, the fact that Microsoft wants to, move to this model, it's going to be a benefit. There will be, I think there's going to be some pieces and parts that we have to think about though, for sure.
Right. And you raise a really good point though, the fact that that's how a lot of these breaches and hacks happen. So do you think that there's going to be a huge dip in these breaches, et cetera, because of this auto update?
It's really hard to say. And the reason I say that is because, Windows these days is, 60 million software lines of code or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. And I always tell people, I tell this to my grad students all the time. I say, look, right now you have a 0 day on your Windows laptop. Mm-hmm. They go, how do you know that? I go, because it just hasn't been discovered yet. Mm-hmm. And because we code, and when we write code, right, when I started doing code back in college a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I got here's your 10K of RAM, figure out how to make that switch flip. Okay? Had to write very elegantly. Right. Today's code is just large and growing, and we have all this memory to do this really great graphics, just like this this podcast we're talking on. It's awesome. However, it just means that there is more room for error. And I read an interesting statistic. Oh gosh, a couple days ago. Like right now, it's the 2022 Cybersecurity Almanac, and I will think of the organization here in a minute. And it's a great stat. Right now, today, roughly 70% of the world is on the internet in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
By 2030, it's going to be better than 90%. Right. So that's more people, more complexity, more code, and there's going to be just more holes. And it's just the fact of doing business. It's the fact of that we live in a software enabled world. And yep, auto patching is great. However, there's still going to be vulnerabilities. If you look at the common vulnerability and exposures database from NIST, every year since like 2017, we have grown in the number of vulnerabilities identified. And it's not that things are worse. It's just that there's more system and more code.
Yeah, hopefully it's not going to make us lazier. And we've got an Apple story coming up too. That, for us Apple users.
We'll get to Apple users in a minute, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to Apple users in a minute. Let's talk about the next story, Layla. So Microsoft seizes Zloader. So Microsoft recently disrupted the operation of one of the most notorious crime botnets. And so for those of you that don't know what a botnet is, that is a series of machines that have been taken over by some malicious code and is run by a bot herder. The bots themselves don't know in many cases that they're actually part of a botnet. That's why you shouldn't click on weird links in your email. I'm just saying, don't do that. It's a terrible idea. So Redmond, so that's Microsoft's headquarters, digital crime unit, said it seized control of 65 domains used to remotely control the Zloader botnet, effectively disabling the crimeware gang's command and control mechanism. The Zloader botnet has been a thorn in Microsoft's sides for many years, infecting Windows-powered computing devices in businesses, hospitals, schools, and homes around the world. The tech giant also named a Crimean hacker as an alleged perpetrator behind the distribution of ransomware related to the network of infected machines. The gang behind the botnet runs malware as a service operation designed to steal and extort money. Microsoft said Zloader attacks have affected nations around the world, with majority targeting the U.S., China, Western Europe, and Japan. So this is great. I like it when we take down bad guy infrastructure. Unfortunately, bad guys have a backup plan. So this will be offline for a bit. We saw that last year with Emotet, but by the end of the year, Emotet was back up in operations. And so again, give the threat actors out there, they've got plenty of time and space to figure out their backups and how they're going to get back online after something like this, because they have to pay for their Maserati somehow.
That's right.
So they want to be able to get. We do. We all want to pay for, but they got to pay for those really expensive cars somehow. So they're going to get back online as quickly as they can. But again, this is people say, well, if they're going to be back online after 7 or 8 months, what's the point? Well, the point is we have made a dent in their monetary take, right? They're making cyber criminals today are making trillions of dollars a year. We're spending, we're out of whack right now. They're making. I was doing the math based on some statistics in cybersecurity. I was looking at the attackers today. They're making 6 times as much money as we're spending in cyber defense. And that's pretty scary. But this does make a dent, and it's good. It's a good news story.
Okay, very good. All right, well, moving on to Amazon. Amazon Web Services announced this week that it recently addressed a vulnerability in Amazon Relational Database Service, or RDS, that could lead to the exposure of internal credentials. Amazon RDS is a managed database service that offers support for several database engines, including Amazon Aurora. The address security issue was identified in the Aurora. Okay, I'm going to need your help with this one, Brad. Post GRE SQL. Did I say it right?
That's it. Yeah, well, that's PostgreSQL, or Postgres or PostgreSQL. Take your pick there. It is an open source SQL database capability. So there you go.
Yes. Okay, perfect. I'm going to have you say it one more time. More specifically, in the third-party open source
PostgreSQL or PostgreSQL.
Okay.
Yeah. Or just say Postgres. Postgres is way better here. Just call, everybody knows what Postgres, and you put the QL on there and it gets a little weird.
This is what happens when you get an expert such as yourself and a layperson in a room together. This is what happens. So the extension log_FDW, which allows a user to leverage the SQL interface to access the database engine log, as well as to build foreign tables. The company has made updates to resolve the issue and also deprecated a series of minor versions, preventing users from creating new instances with those versions. Whew. Got through that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, but it's all about SQL here. So structured query language, any database system. So pick your favorite online shopping experience: Amazon, eBay, Target, Walmart. I don't care. Wherever you go, wherever you shop, King Soopers. I don't know. Wherever you shop for your stuff. That's backended by a database. And depending on where you host your data set, your database at, that database might be an Amazon RDS instance, which is cool and they do good work. But just like everything else, because you use SQL to interact with it, you can then use SQL commands, especially in this case here, to extract data from the database, add tables, corrupt things, do bad stuff, So this is, again, another good news story here. If you have Amazon RDS instances and you get the little notification in your interface for your management interface that says you need to update this, definitely update that.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
And you mentioned Apple to start off. We're going to have a couple of Apple stories here coming up for our Apple users out there. So here, no surprise, there's iOS malware. This is not a surprise to all of us out here. It's, we've always talked about the fact that Apple was not a big target for malware, but as Apple continues to proliferate its devices, it's going to become more of a target. So hackers are homing in on Apple. The tech giant's increased use in enterprise is making it a bigger target for malicious actors. Once associated almost strictly with home users and creative industries, the company's expansion is catching the attention of cyber attackers, whose viruses and malware are now focused on iOS and macOS systems. Statistics show that macOS devices were used in 23% of enterprises in the United States in 2021. And so iPhones is the big one here. They account for 49% of the business smartphone market, which is that's a big jump from previous years. And iPads were the most used tablets in the workplace. The perception of Apple devices as inherently secure has created a lax attitude to securing the devices, with the notion that these devices are secure by default. So we'll put this one to bed right now. No device is secure by default. If you're connecting a device to a network, any device is potentially susceptible. There is malware out there. It's called multipartite malware. So it has code embedded, so it's smart enough to say, am I on a Windows machine? Run this. Am I on a Linux box? Run this. Am I on Apple? Run this. And there are other things that we find on Apple devices. So think if you have an Apple workstation that's running Python or Go or pick a language, an attacker can write malicious code to run, in the background using whatever's on that device from the standpoint of an IDE, or so an integrated development environment, whether it's Python or Go or something else. So, or just, plain old bash scripting on Apple devices. You can do that too. So Apple devices are no different than any other device you connect to the internet.
Yeah, good advice there. Never let your guard down. Here's a great story, another one that I think a lot of people can relate to here. Apple's CEO went to Washington this week in light of new rules that could threaten iPhone users' privacy. Well, Tim Cook outlined the Silicon Valley giant's perspective as momentum gathered for legislation that could weaken Apple's app market dominance, which critics have said amounts to a monopoly. At issue is efforts by policymakers in the United States and elsewhere to force Apple to let apps onto the iPhone from places other than the App Store, which is currently the only gateway onto the firm's billions of devices in circulation. Apple and Google hold a dominant position in the market, with their operating systems running on the overwhelming majority of the world's smartphones. Critics have countered that Apple uses the App Store to its advantage, taking a bite out of financial transactions and keeping app makers under its thumb. Well, Cook said that if unvetted apps are allowed on the iPhone, the unintended consequences will be profound. So, Google Play, the App Store, those are the only two. Those are the only two players. So
well, and I think, so from a strictly cybersecurity perspective, the fact that in both Google Play and the App Store, your app that's going to go onto your smartphone, or anybody's smartphone for that matter, has to be vetted and meet the standards of whatever the App Store is. Like I said, Google Play or the Apple App Store. This is a good thing, right? This is a good thing because it protects users from potential badness. We saw before Google Play, started getting really into, again, same kind of thing that Apple's doing. There was a lot of apps that you could load onto your phone that weren't vetted through the controls of the store, and here's a shock, your phone was compromised. And so it's a really interesting juxtaposition when you think about, you want to be secure, you want to, balance these things. As far as the finance piece of this with Apple, I'm going to defer that to folks who are way smarter than me on that. But from a strictly security perspective, it is super important that that's that. If you really want to load stuff on your Apple phone, don't do this, by the way, ethics again. Feel free to jailbreak it and violate the warranty. Right? Or root your Android phone. One of those two. You can do it. It's never recommended because, again, you potentially give threat actors out there permissions to do things on your phone that you shouldn't. For example, threat actors out there will deliver malicious APK, so Android package files, .apk files, to try to install apps in the background on your phone without you even knowing it. So that's out there. You click on the wrong, shortened link on a text message, you might get something that you don't want to. And if you break some of the controls of these app stores and the way the operating systems actually work on these devices, you're really just asking for trouble, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Last story's yours.
All right, last story's mine. Healthcare email breach. So a major medical practice in Illinois has informed roughly 500,000 individuals that their personal information was potentially compromised in a data breach. The Christie Clinic said the data breach occurred last year when a third party gained unauthorized access to a single business email account. The healthcare provider said the hacked email account may have contained names, addresses, medical and health insurance information, and social security numbers. The healthcare services provider also noted it hasn't determined the full scope of the compromise yet, but that it decided to inform all individuals of that information and who were likely impacted by the breach. The breach was likely an attempt to intercept financial transactions. And this is one of those ones, again, the current going statistic is about every 11 seconds there is some sort of breach around the world when it comes to this. And, again, you might say, well, why are they going after healthcare records? Because why not? Because they can. The threat actors here, they're looking for the financial gain. They're looking for data that they can resell on the dark web. This is just one of those things. And I know there's a lot of people, and I'm hearing this sort of rumbling in the industry, or not in the industry, but in industries in general, that, breaches, they're just the cost of doing business in cybersecurity. We'll just get some insurance. It'll be okay. Mm-hmm. We really need to think differently. We need to say, how do I get the minimum controls in place to better protect not only my organization, but the customers of my organization? If we don't put some thought into that, if we're not building that into our budgets, right? It's only a matter of time before you get breached, and then depending on the breach, the fines and the monetary penalties that come with it are potentially significant to the point where you might actually have somebody get put out of business just because of that, not, aside from trying to recover from the breach. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important that we really start to think about that proactive piece, not the reactive piece when it comes to cybersecurity.
Brad, it's such an interesting perspective from you today. Thank you so much. This has been fun.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate that. That's going to do it for us. On behalf of Brad and myself, thank you so much for watching. You are now in sync with MilCyberSync. We'll see you again next week.